Now, how about if you were to say to yourself, 2 more miles, 2 more miles, 2 more miles, and you just keep chanting that like a mantra. I talk a lot about mantras with the athletes that I coach because I think it can be a real effective way to not only distract yourself from your pain, but tune into something that might be important for you to pay attention to. But even this 2 more miles, it's not like that's giving you a particular instruction as to what to do, but it can be used to find a rhythm, to keep a pace, to it's almost chanting, and you can run in time with it, or you can ride your bike in time with it and match your cadence to it. It can be something that, although distracting from your pain, can also be used to keep yourself in a rhythm and find your pace. So I really advocate the use of these kind of mantras to say to yourself. Now, how about saying something like, okay, keep going, keep your shoulders loose, finish strong. Now, those kind of things to say to yourself can also take your flashlight away from your pain and point it toward the things that you need to do. And you'll notice that in this last one, I'm going to use my spotlight here, there's two kinds of things, two kinds of self-talk here. There is keep going and finish strong. Those are more motivating uses of self-talk. They don't tell you what to do, but they attempt to create a certain kind of emotional reaction. The middle one, shoulders loose, this is something that for both runners and cyclists, you find that when they get tense, they have their shoulders in their ears. And this is more an instructional use of self-talk. It tells them what it is they need to concentrate on in order to perform their best. So not only is the flashlight pointing away from their pain, it's also giving them either motivation or instruction as to what to do to compete at their peak. So those are some uses of self-talk. The keys for using self-talk for exertion pain management, I'm going to walk you through a series of steps here that you can do on your own. And this now will go along with the handouts I sent you by email. I know that there were 3 or 4 people that registered within the last several hours. So I sent off a PDF file of handouts this morning around 8:15. But for those of you, if you signed up for this webinar after, say, 8:30 or so this morning, I just sent these handoffs off to you maybe an hour ago. So if you haven't checked your inbox, they are probably there waiting for you. But you don't really need to have them in front of you in order to follow along here. There's a worksheet on the second page, and it says on the top of it, Thought Stopping and Replacement Worksheet. And this is what we're going to be using as we go through this. So the first step here is to know what situations you have in your race where you begin to hurt the most. And it's important to just take some time to think about what kind of situations, where are the places where you really begin to get fatigued and hurt. Then, once you recognize these situations, it's important to recognize what thoughts you're having about the pain at the times where you're hurting. And what I mean by that is that there could be a variety of things that you're saying to yourself in these situations that cause you the most pain, some of which may be self-regulatory. Okay? Just keep up the pace. You're beginning to hurt now. You got 5 more miles to run. Just dole out the effort appropriately. I'm not talking about those kind of thoughts. I'm talking about the negative thoughts that you have about your pain. Oh my God, this hurts. I'm going to die. I can't finish. I stink at this. Who am I kidding? Those kind of thoughts. And the more that you just pay attention to what's going on in your head, particularly during hard training efforts at first, because if you pay attention to what you're thinking and you forget to go harder, then it doesn't really hurt you in your training efforts. So I wouldn't recommend you do this in a competition immediately. But the more you just tune in to what you're saying to yourself, the better you get at recognizing some of these thoughts. Because the deal is that a lot of these thoughts we can have at these times occur in the background, in the back part of our mind. And they still affect us, but we just don't realize it at the time. The analogy I use is that it's like the lighting or the soundtrack that we hear in a movie or in a play. We usually don't pay that much attention to the lighting or the soundtrack, but it really does affect the way that the other information is communicated to us. So that's step 2, is to recognize what thoughts we have about the pain during those particular situations in the performance. The next step is to stop that cycle of negative thinking, because you may know from your own experience, once you begin to go negative, it's really easy to keep going negative. And so one negative thought leads to another, and before you know it, you're talking yourself into a poor performance. But if that's all you did was to recognize your negative thoughts and then to stop them, you'd just be stopping them time after time after time. What you need to do is replace the negative thoughts with something that's more positive. Right? And this worksheet, the thought stopping and replacement worksheet, is what we're going to use to help you make a plan to replace those negative thoughts with thoughts that will help you compete at your peak. Okay. So if you have that handout in front of you, you can take a look at it. If not, the handout just has 3 columns in it. The left column is a place where you can list situations where you talk negatively to yourself. And that's the left-hand column. And the middle column is a place for you to list the negative thoughts you have, the negative self-talk, the things you say to yourself that interfere with your performance at these times when you are in the most pain in your performance. Now, the right-hand column of this worksheet is probably the most positive, probably the most important part of this. This is the place where you list positive, realistic, alternative thoughts, things that you can say to yourself at these times when you're really hurting that will help your performance. And I'm going to give you some examples of this in just a moment. Okay, so let's go through these steps one at a time. And so I really want you to get this so that after this webinar, you're really going to be able to do this on your own in a way that's going to be helpful to you. So step 1 is to think about the situations where you hurt the most. Some of the keys here are to be as specific as you can. So, for example, you don't want to say, oh, going up hills is really hard for me. But you want to be much more detailed and specific than that. What kind of hills? Are they the long, slow rises, or it's the sharp inclines that really go up steep that are worst for you? When? Is it the hill that you have to climb right out of the gate when you're not warmed up yet? Is that the thing that really gets to you? Is it midway through? Under what conditions? Is it in the rain? Is it in the heat? Be as specific as you possibly can about the situations where you hurt the most. Also, if you can make it course specific, that's even better. So if you're trying to use this technique to help you with a particular race, if you know the race course and you know this part of the race, this is where I really start hurting, that's even better, because you can get a much more specific and detailed idea of what it is you say to yourself in this particular place. And of course, what you find once you begin to think about this more is that you begin to add and adjust your list of situations where you hurt because you're going to be more aware. And self-awareness is really the key to a lot of mental skills training. The more you are aware of how you perform under different circumstances, the better armed you will be to intervene mentally to perform at your peak. Okay, so let me give you some examples of specific kinds of situations that you might include on your list, or things like this. For those of you who are cyclists, and if you are in the Charlottesville or Richmond area, you may know of, or you may have raced the Jefferson Cup that goes on every May. In Charlottesville, in this course, the start line is about 2 miles away from this sharp off-camber right-hand turn that goes on to Blenheim Road. And immediately after taking this turn, the road goes up a pretty steep hill, the steepest hill in the course. So if you are a rider that has ridden this race or has anticipated riding this race, and you see Blenheim and you think, oh, this is a place where I could really start hurting, that might be something to put on your list. For me, I like just tooling around my bike, doing long distances, and I can do a century ride from my own house. I leave the house, I can go 100 miles on my bike, and I don't have to take my bike anywhere, so it's really convenient. But when I do it in the summer and it's 90 degrees out, the last 20 miles, everything is hurting me, and I need to be really aware of that at the time so I can get myself mentally prepared to do something at that point, because I know I'm going to be hurting.